stop. And our body, we go back to the Bernstein principle that Pete talked about earlier, your body will be able to do the activity if it's built appropriately. So, you know, the crossover symmetry is great. The only bad part about it is it's really expensive. We first started doing the exercises with our J-bands that are really cheap. So when you're thinking about finances, we actually had all our kids buy their own J-bands for a while. And then we just taught them the crossover symmetry with our J-bands, which isn't great. Now that we funded the crossover symmetry, it's wonderful. So great shoulder strengthening exercise. Next is the shoulder tube. The first time I saw the shoulder tube was Bauer, and you guys probably were watching him at UCLA in the College World Series like so many years ago, and he had one, and I looked into it, and the first thing I saw was it increases blood flow. And so that's always good, getting us prepared to pitch as well as recovering the arm afterwards, and we'll actually show that that's a post-throw activity as well. But also, man, we're talking about like a 2-minute deal here, okay? It can be really fast. Coach Klunder, you have the total bar, though,
Right.
and that's...
These are the $110 body blades, Johnson High School. The $30 total bars are on Amazon.com.
All right. So we just show some exercises here we do. Again, you can find these around. If you go to a clinic, listen to...
Wait for them.
Oh, you just want it to run through again? Is that
There
what
you
you're
go.
doing?
Sorry. Keep going.
Okay. Next, this is really complicated here. This is where we get crazy. All right. One of the things we're not showing on here is obviously weight room. Pitching is a giant puzzle. The whole point of me putting the pills on the beginning of this slideshow was that it is not a one part piece. You know, it's a giant puzzle of things. And one of the things that we do that's not on here is weight room, but also then is our mobility. Mobility has been a big thing in the strength and conditioning community. Talking about it a couple years ago, we started to get FMS testing done for our kids to see where there are areas of their body where they can't function appropriately or move appropriately, because that's probably a constraint that if they don't work through, it doesn't matter how much we do throwing-wise, they're just going to hit a wall and be done. And so we spend as much time as possible with this stuff. In the weight room, we hit it every single day that we're in the weight room. And our pitchers definitely do this stuff every day of the year. It's the whole thing with our position players, like how much time can we devote to it? I'd love to spend a lot of time every day. It gets real crazy here in a second. They do a lot of different things, and we try to incorporate this as much as possible, but again, this would be something that you have to decide how much you want to devote for it. I will say, this is probably where your kid hits a wall. I have a kid that got stuck at like 82 miles an hour for 2 years, and he just recently broke through. It was like the best day of his life. And he's been working on mobility over the last 6 months like nobody's business. His constraint was mobility. He throws every day, he works his ass off in the weight room, but it just doesn't matter because he's limited in different areas like his hips. They're really tight, so he's working on his hips every day. That'd be a hip exercise right there, and it's really helped him. So you guys would have to look into this on your own, but if you have like a therapy place that's maybe in your town, maybe you call them up and say, hey, do you want to come get to know these kids, test them out a little bit, and maybe we can create a partnership, and we'll send you some kids when they get hurt. They make a little money off of it. It's a good deal for everybody. And you've been really good about that, right?
Yep, we've done that too. A local physical therapy organization in town, they come in and FMS test all our people. I don't know much about it personally. They come in, they do it, they give us corrective exercises, and I mean honestly, the risk of injury goes down a lot. You know, once you make them mobile at certain places and things like that. Because how many of our guys, we've all seen our guys do the normal stretches, right? The beginning, between lines, and then they go through kind of halfway. But adding some individuality to it is really helpful. Before we throw every day, before we long toss, we do plyo carry. And we stole it straight from Cambodia, driveline baseball. And I probably did it wrong early on. Why do we do it pre-throwing, before catch play, and before long toss? Because we want to map a high-level, efficient, safe pattern before adding the volume, before adding the long toss. We want to try and map as efficient pattern, to reduce injury and create velocity as we can. the heavy weights on the PlyoCare balls actually are safer. You know, Bodie just released that blog about long tossing with 6-ounce balls and 7-ounce balls because, you know, it's actually safer, you think, adding weight, but there's nothing magical about the 5-ounce baseball. Especially if we think about it in terms of, you know, our 8-year-olds use the same 5-ounce baseball as a major leaguer, right? So there's nothing miracle about the 5-ounce baseball. It's really an arbitrary thing. In fact, baseballs when they first came out were a lot heavier than they are today. You know, back when baseball was first getting started. And then, you know, we think about footballs and how Tom Brady can throw, you know, 900 passes a day and not get hurt, compared to a baseball pitcher that gets hurt, you know, more often, obviously, than those guys. You never hear about Tommy John surgery for Peyton Manning or anything. And part of it, there's a lot of factors, but part of it's the weight creates an efficient pattern, you know, and takes stress off the UCL. So that's how we start, you know, after we do all the stuff that Michael talked about, that's why we start doing the PlyoCare. And as far as the RPE, the rate of perceived exertion, so how intense we do the PlyoCare, if it's a compete day, if it's a bullpen day, both in the spring and in the summer, we build up to 100%. So they start a little slower, and then throughout the course of 2 sets, they build up to 100%. If it's a training day, we have 2 different kinds of training days. One's you know, movement pattern focused, and one's a command focus. Obviously, more the pitching rather than working on the movements. That should be 100%. That should be training. I must have made a mistake here. The training day should be 100%. Because you're trying to create those movements. And Mike is going to talk a little bit about drills later, but he's going to talk about what we do on a training day. But during the PlyoCare section of that, it's 100%, high intent, all those kinds of things. And on a recovery day, which actually we've incorporated more in the weight room lately, on a recovery day, we still do the drills, we still do this stuff, we just do it about half speed, right? And I've seen Bodie's stuff, he says 70%. Our guys kind of struggled with 70%. You know, finding out what that was and going too hard on it, so we actually backed it down to more 50 and just tried to work the pattern without adding too much stress to the arm. And then last one here is, how do your kids learn? You know, obviously it's been one of the theme of the days here, to not verbally terrorize them. And we try and let this drill be the learning, that if you create the right patterns through differentiated weights, you know, obviously Pete's an expert on weighted bats and some of those things. Same principles, the Bernstein principle, set principle, same thing go for obviously our throwing stuff. And so we try and let these drills and some cues within these drills, and we try and take that to the mound. You know, Michael's going to talk about the drills after throwing. We would say that, I don't know, in the last however many years since we started all this stuff, we don't stand on the mound and correct pitchers. So when it's time to compete, and that's why we put compete down both, when it's time to compete, and it's time to chart, it's time to do all those things, on a bullpen session, it's not about coaching or anything like that. So we don't stand on the mound and say, hey, finish your pitch, or get extension, or follow through, as much as we would say, try and create that pattern here, because pitching is just high-level throwing with a little more rules, right? So we just have to stand in a certain place, and you're going to, you know, the state tournament, no hybrid stand, that's it. That's the difference between throwing and pitching right now, is just a couple of the different rules. But if we create a high-level throwing pattern, hopefully we can just take that right to the mound. The first one, so we start when we do 5 drills. And we start with the most constraint drill, and we work our way to what looks more like throwing and pitching. But the first one is just a reverse throw here. We got both guys, they're both named Brady, makes it easy for me or hard. And they just reverse throw, so just a couple of the cues we use here. He's going to push off his front foot. He's going to push off his front foot. This movement's going to start in the lower back, and he's going to throw it high off the wall with his fingers staying up, unless he's a subby guy. Michael's got more of those than the rest of us would. If you don't throw 80 in the program, you end up right here. That's a good camp story, Michael. We're crushed for time. All right, so after this, the fingers go up, so you start the movement, push off the front foot, start the movement in the lower back, reverse throw up, and on intense days, if you're not building to 100, you're already at 100, you want to think about just slapping somebody in the face. It's not just a rotation here. You can see the guys are actually, you know, throwing it reverse throw. And it's for the same reason Michael talked about with the wrist weights. We can't throw, but we can't stop. So this is building the strength in the posterior shoulder right here. And a lot of times, you know, guys after they pitch the next day, you'll say, where are you sore? right here. So we try and build that strength right here, and in some of the drills, we're gonna talk about starting with the pain, but this one helps the posterior shoulder, okay? Pivot pickoffs is probably the single best drill, and if you follow the driveline baseball, obviously this is all over. This used to be a Marshall Torque thing for you old Wolfworth guys. I'm that same way. And so when you turn here, we're keeping the feet kind of square to the camera in this case. The ball comes up behind the head, and we try and get depth. Let me play it again. We try and get a little bit of depth in our knees here and throw the ball upward, okay? So if I do it from the side, we try and get that efficient arm action back here, turn to the side to maximize that rotation and torque. Same thing in hitting. I saw the brilliant video about Chapman and the two A's guys that were, doing the same thing. So we're trying to maximize our separation from our front hip to our back shoulder, our throwing side shoulder, and we can turn this way and throw the ball up to try and train that efficient pattern before we start going out. Because here's the deal, and I try and tell our younger kids this too. Because of the 5-ounce baseball, you can do some things wrong, and it doesn't show up right away. Because it's so light in your hand, you can do some things inefficiently and get away with it. But you can't over time, right? Because as soon as we add volume, which is exactly what Michael's going to talk about, adding volume and trying to increase velocity, as soon as you do that over time, or 110 pitches in a game, or extreme long toss, or weighted ball throws, running guard pull-up, we've all seen the video of the fancy LED boards and stuff on driveline, the pull-down workout. As soon as you add that type of volume, that's when it'll flare up. So we try and train the efficient pattern with the heavy ball first. Okay, go on. Rollins is the next one. And so it's basically a pivot pick. You can see in the old Wolfworth terms, this was called a walking torque. He's not going to turn his body. If you watch his feet here, his toes, they stay towards the target. And maybe you can see that better eventually on this one. But see how he stays square to the target, and his toes are going to face that target. He's going to come up with the ball in an efficient pattern. And I know our young kids, when they first get into our program or first start doing this stuff, they're like, "God, it kind of feels like I'm throwing a football." You can throw a football longer ways, but you probably never got hurt throwing a football. It's, in some ways it is like that. And obviously these guys are showing off with the video. They're trying to be as connected as possible up on the top half here. But you step right into it, and again, the coaching point here is you want to throw the ball up. You want to sit into your glutes a little bit there. Okay, when we talked about lower half, when you start throwing this ball, you want to sit into your glutes here a little bit and rotate around that front hip. Brady does a nice job right here. I'm not sure how Brady does here. It's just okay right there. But the lefty here gets all the way around his front hip to create an efficient decel pattern. Most injuries are on the decel side. It means after the ball is released. So he's rotating around his front hip, and he's not. Michael thought this video was in slow motion, but some guys do pitch varsity in the 70s. And so this ball's going 74 right here, probably at max. And if he's going to stop and go 74 and stop it right here, that's going to be really hard on the deceleration phase, on the injury phase. Risk for injury goes up. So what Brady's going to try and do here is throw 74 here and decelerate it all the way around his front hip, both with his body and his arm. Now he's got a little bit of slap across, which we have to work on here. He's got to turn it over and decelerate the right way as he comes around, but we'll work on that. He's kind of a younger guy. All right, the rocker drill, starting to look more and more like pitching. This was the old hip drill. You're going to see he's going to start gaining that linear momentum. And the main focus here, obviously we want to stay connected up here like he's doing a pretty good job of. Right there you can see he stays really connected. He doesn't forearm fly out, put stress on that UCL. The other thing is his front leg, we're gonna eventually try and lock that out so that we can rotate around that front hip with the other leg. So everything's backwards for Brady because he's left-handed, for me being right-handed, but when he throws it, eventually we need to lock this out so we can rotate around that front hip, like I said, to have an efficient decel pattern. And watching Michael's guys at the camp here, this person must have been pretty short filming this video, but watching Michael's guys at the camp, they're unbelievable at this. They got the connection balls out doing the upper half connection, but as they turn over, you can see how they keep their arm bent. If we straighten that arm, we put a bang on the back of the elbow and a bang on the posterior shoulder as we slap across. As you turn it over, if you stay bent, you reduce the amount of that, and obviously we got some work to go on top there. Last one, walking windups. And we've probably done walking windups wrong. I tried to film it a little bit better this year. But as Brady starts walking, it's we've all done the stopwatch on leg kicks. Make sure